When we were creating numbered access control lists, we were at global config because it affected the whole router, and we used the access list 1 command to create the access list, which was access list 1. Right after I did that, when I pressed enter, after I did the rest of my parameters, I stayed at global config, and every line item that I did was part of that access list. So each line item was its access control entry, and then the whole thing was access list 1. With a named access control list, we didn't, again, do it from global config. And in this case, I'm going to change up the syntax a little bit. I'm going to do IP access list, and now I want to give it the name that we're going to work with, and I need to specify whether it's standard or extended, so I'm going to do a standard access control list, standard, and I'm going to name it HR control. Again, hopefully that means something to me. When I hit enter at this point, my prompt changes to router config standard STD named access control list, or standard NACL. And now every time I put something in here, permit, deny, I'm doing it all from the standard prompt, and I'm creating all of these line items within my standard access control list. And when we go back and look at it afterwards, you're going to see an index value. Line 10, permit blah, blah, blah. Line 20, permit blah, blah, blah. Line 30, deny blah, blah, blah. And they'll be indexed. So it gives us the ability to go in and delete a line if we want to, or insert lines. Where back in the olden days, back in the real old days, when you only had an numbered access control list, if you wanted to insert a value, you had to actually delete the whole thing and then recreate it. With named access control lists, we can actually, again, insert line items or delete lines. Like if I needed something in here between the 20 and the 30 before we started denying things, create another one, I could actually insert line 15 in here and actually put that line item in between the permits and the denies. So again, it was a little bit more functional for us as far as how it shows up, how we work with it. It gives us the ability to modify on the fly rather than have to delete and reinsert it, which is a really good reason why back in the day we used to copy all the stuff or put everything in Notepad, and then we wanted to modify. You could modify the Notepad parameter, turn back around and copy it in, because you can copy and paste anything into your router configuration and it will just take like you were typing it. Let me get rid of this for now and take a look at the router. Where's Packet Tracer? I'm on Packet Tracer. Here's Packet Tracer. We did previously a standard access control list, which is probably still in here. Enable Cisco show access list. So I actually do have my access list 1, and we can see those 2 different line items in here. So what I want to do is create a standard named access control list to see how that works instead. So I'll go to my global config. I'm going to create IP access list standard, and we'll name it HR control. Notice that my prompt changes to that config standard NACL component, and I can in here say permit 192.168.10.205. I can permit 192.168.10.210, and then I can permit 192.168.10.215, assuming those are the 3 devices I want, and then I can explicitly put in here a deny any. If you've done this before, you remember from the previous discussion on our named access, a numbered access control list, I don't need to put that deny any in there because there is an implicit deny at the end of every access list. But again, if we look up here when I did show access list before, you don't see the deny any at the bottom. It's here. It's right below the permit any and the one that was previous. So if I go back up and show you here, I created this access list 1. This access list 1 has these 2 entries, but there is actually, you can't see it, but there's a 30 deny any below that. But you can't see it, so I couldn't track it, which was okay because I've got a permit any above it. I don't necessarily need to see it in this example. But in the case below, where I did 3 permits, permit 205, permit 210, permit 215. I didn't need to put the deny in here, but if I ever had a match, it would never show up on my list. I couldn't see it. So in this particular case, I've got 3 explicit permits, which is going to deny everybody else by default, but I'm going to add this line so I can actually see if anybody actually hits this deny. If I'm only expecting these 3 machines on the network, but all of a sudden I get some denies, I'll want to see it because something's not quite configured correctly. If I jump back out and take a look at the show access list, so I'm done with this, I'll do exit, I'm out of here, come out one more time, show access list. I can now see that I have 2 defined. I've got my standard IP access numbered access list, and I have my standard named access list here. Notice I do have my deny any at the bottom. It is now an explicit deny. I put it in specifically so that I can actually see how many matches I have at the very end. The access list one up here in the newer iOSs, the way that Cisco does this is they actually, even though this is a numbered access list, they treat it as a named access list when they put it into code. So I can actually insert them here as well. If you're working with an older iOS, you may not actually have these line items that exist in there for you. So how can I save this? How can I back it? Well, if I save my running config, show run, I would actually have my access control list as defined in here. So there's my access list 1 deny with my access list entry. So in the running config, it looks like a numbered access control list. The named access control list actually looks like a named access control list here. You can take and copy these, right-click, copy, paste them in a notepad, make modifications, come back to your router later on, and paste them in. If I paste it right now, it's going to give me a whole bunch of errors because I'm at the wrong prompt. But if I were at global config, which is where I need to be, and I paste those parameters in, it didn't do anything because they were already there. But if I deleted those access control lists and I wanted them back, I could simply take it from a text file, open up Notepad, take it from a WordPad, whatever I want, paste it into the router, and that's how I could back up and then restore a configuration or modify a configuration if I had a lot of modifications to do. We also do this a lot of times in a production environment. I wouldn't be sitting in a router actually making configuration changes. What I'd want to do is do them in a non-production machine, then bring the changes over. So again, having a text file of some sort I could use is a way that I could take my changed access control list and import it into my router. Again, that would be how we would implement a standard named access control list.